Namaste, I'm Dhruvika, the design team member at Craft Angles. Today I have 3 cards for you using the vellum as the main element. This is my first card. To make this card, I shall be using the Craft Angles cardstock, the Earl Grey in 250 GSM, a stamp set by Craft Angles called the Celebrate You, Craft Angles stencil called the Braids, and the Craft Angles steel die. I shall be using Fuel Liquid Watercolors by Craft Angles, the embossing ink and the embossing powder. The main element, which is the vellum paper, I'm using the one which is 150 GSM, the translucent paper. To begin with, I've trimmed a panel measuring 11 by 4.25 inches, and I shall be now taking out my stencil, securing well on the cardstock using the washi tape so that the stencil doesn't move while I'm smooshing the embossing ink. While my stencil is perfectly secured, I shall be using my embossing ink directly and will be smooshing through the stencil. So this will give me the ink only on the negative spaces. Once I'm done with this, I will be now taking off my stencil and sprinkling it generously with the silver embossing powder. This will give me a tone-on-tone effect. I've now set it and see how it looks. Now it is time to make the main panel, which is of the colors. I will be using these colors, stamping it with the Versamark Onyx Black on the watercolor panel, which is watercolor proof ink. I shall now be coloring my flowers using the peony pink and the moss green color. I also have some lime green liquid watercolors. Since I'm not a watercolor artist, I will be running through and skipping this part because it's a very basic watercoloring that I shall be doing here. So this is how my flowers look. I've also fussy cut them after I've watercolored. Using this steel die, I have cut the panel from the vellum paper. Now I'll be placing it diagonally to give it a little dimension, and now we'll be sticking it. For the sentiments, I will be using the charcoal black, and these sentiments so happy from you, from all of us. I'll be heat setting it using the white embossing powder. Once all my panels are well set, I will be pasting my sentiments using the double-sided tape to give it an additional dimension. And with this, my first card is ready. For my second card, I will be using the vellum paper, the cardstock, which is a dual white cardstock, 230 GSM, cardstock Desert Sand 250 GSM, and the stamp set Happily Ever After. I shall be using the embossing ink and the panel. I have already cut these panels measuring 4.25 by 5.5 inches, and now I'll be stamping my image of the flowers and then heat setting it with the gold powder. So this is how my panel looks, and it is time to color it. I shall be using the Copic markers and to color the whole image. I'm again not a Copic artist, thus I'll just delete this part and move forward. Once my panel is ready, it is now time to trim it off by the stem that I have created, and the edges I'm cutting with the scissors. And to make it a little more intricate, I'll be using the paper cutter to cut between the lines so that it gives me an incessant panel of the paper and the vellum. So this is how my panel looks after I've cut it. Now I'll be placing it over the desert sand cardstock, and half of the panel will be white and half of the panel will be of the vellum. So to make it a little more attractive, I will be using the starry background, again securing it there and smooshing it with some embossing ink. Once it is done, I'll be sprinkling over some white embossing powder and then heat setting it. This is how my panel looks after it has been heat set. I'm using I've folded it in half a quarter inch to secure it, and that is how I'll be fixing it. And then I'll be adhering my white panel onto this is how my panel looks after heat setting. I am just placing my white panel such that it is exactly in line with the Desert Storm cardstock. For my third card, I've made a frosted panel look. For this, I'll be using the cardstock denim blue, which is again 250 GSM, vellum paper, 150 GSM translucent paper, Hello Lovely stamp set, which contains the lotus. For this, I have already cut 4.25 by 5.5 inches tall cardstock. I'm taking a panel of 2 inches by 5.5 inches of both vellum and white cardstock. For the white cardstock, I'll be stamping the lotus images randomly, but although I would want to have only 3 such that I will color them in the pastel blue and some background in the green. This is how my panel looks after I have stamped it with the Versamark ink, again which is a waterproof ink, and I'll be coloring it with the colors which I used before. After my panel is colored, I have just stuck it, pasted it on my blue cardstock, trimming it off the extra part which was hanging. And now to give it a frosted look, I'll be adhering the vellum panel over it, just folding it and then pasting it with the white adhesive glue. Usually I use the Fevicol, works very perfectly fine, and press it hard and put it for some time under a heavy block. To finish the look, I'll be using the Miss You stamp set, Miss You sentiments from the All of Us stamp set, and then heat embossing it using the gold embossing powder. It's a perfect way to create any frosted look, although when the winters are coming. So these were my 3 cards. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe.